The alarm rang through the Spirit of Discovery at 3 in the morning. Commander Jake Morrison rolled out of his bed and pulled on his uniform. His hands moved fast as he buttoned up his shirt. Something big was happening. Jake ran down the metal hallway of the ship. His boots made loud sounds on the floor. Other crew members rushed past him, heading to their stations. Everyone looked worried and excited at the same time. When Jake reached the bridge, Dr. Sophie Chen was already there. She stood in front of a large screen, staring at the data. Her dark hair was messy and her eyes were wide. Jake had known Sophie for 10 years. He had never seen her look so shocked. "Commander, you need to see this," Sophie said without looking away from the screen. "We picked up an energy signature near the gas giant. It's not natural. Someone built it." Jake stepped closer and looked at the data. His heart started beating faster. Humanity had been looking for alien life for over 100 years. They had found bacteria on Mars and strange fish on Europa's ocean, but they had never found anyone like them. No one who could build things. No one who could think and dream and wonder about the stars. "How big is it?" Jake asked. "Twice the size of our ship," Sophie answered. "Maybe bigger." "And Jake, it's waiting for us. It's just sitting there like it wants us to come closer." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment he had trained for his whole life. But training and real life were different things. If he made a mistake now, he could start a war. Or worse, he could make humanity look weak or stupid in front of beings who might be much smarter than them. "Get everyone to their stations," Jake said. "Tell Lieutenant Ryan Cole to prepare a security team. But tell him to keep the weapons powered down. We don't want to look like we're attacking." 2 hours later, the Spirit of Discovery moved slowly toward the alien ship. Jake sat in the captain's chair and watched the view screen. As they got closer, he could see the alien vessel more clearly. It was beautiful. The ship had smooth curves and was covered in patterns that seemed to move and change color. It looked like art and science mixed together. "They're opening a port," Sophie said. "It looks like a docking bay. They want us to come inside." Jake's mind raced. Going inside an alien ship could be a trap, but refusing might insult them. He made his choice. "Prepare a landing team," Jake said. "Sophie, Ryan, and 6 others. I'm going with them." Ryan appeared on the bridge 5 minutes later. He was tall and strong with short brown hair and serious eyes. "Commander, is this smart?" "We don't know anything about them." "That's why we're here," Jake said. "To learn." The small shuttle left the Spirit of Discovery and flew into the alien docking bay. As soon as they were inside, the bay doors closed behind them. Jake felt his stomach drop. They were trapped now. They had to trust these aliens. When the team stepped out of the shuttle, they found themselves in a large room filled with soft blue light. The walls seemed to glow from the inside. The air was warm and smelled like flowers Jake had never seen before. It was strange but not unpleasant. Then they came. The aliens walked through a doorway at the far end of the room. Jake's breath caught in his throat. They looked almost human, but not quite. They were tall and thin, with skin that shimmered with colors that changed as they moved. Their eyes were large and dark like pools of night sky. They wore long robes that seemed to float around them. One alien stepped forward. She was clearly important. Her robes were more colorful and her skin patterns were brighter. She moved with grace and confidence. Behind her, 4 other aliens stood and watched. The important alien stopped a few feet away from Jake. She looked at him with those dark eyes. Then something strange happened. Her colors changed to darker shades. Her face showed confusion and then something that looked like fear. She turned to the aliens behind her and made sounds that Jake couldn't understand. They sounded musical and complex. The other aliens looked shocked too. They all stared at the humans like they had seen a ghost. Sophie whispered, "Jake, something's wrong. They look scared." Jake raised his hand slowly to show he was not dangerous. "We come in peace," he said, even though he knew they probably could not understand him. "We are from Earth. We want to be friends." The important alien watched Jake speak. Her colors slowly changed back to lighter shades. She seemed to calm down a little. She touched a device on her wrist and then pointed at Jake. The device made a soft beeping sound. For the next hour, the aliens and humans tried to communicate. It was slow and hard. The aliens showed pictures and symbols. The humans drew diagrams of atoms and numbers. Little by little, they started to understand each other. The alien's device was learning human language. Finally, the device worked well enough for basic words. The important alien spoke, and the device translated in a flat, electronic voice. "I am Velshara, Princess of the Jin Empire. We thought you were not real. We thought you were a trick of our minds, Jake frowned. Why would you think that? Velshara's colors flickered in a pattern that seemed sad. Because we cannot sense you. All living things with minds are connected through what we call the field. We feel each other's thoughts and emotions. But you are silent. You are like empty spaces where minds should be. We have never met anyone like you before, Sophie gasped. Jake felt dizzy. They were talking about telepathy. All these aliens could read minds. All of them except humans. How many species are in your empire? Jake asked carefully. The Xeen Empire has contact with 12,000 species, Velshara said. But the whole galaxy has more than 40,000 known intelligent species. All of them are connected to the field. Until now. Jake felt the weight of those words. 40,000 species. All of them could sense each other's minds. And humans were the only ones who couldn't. They were the only ones who lived in silence. Velshara stepped closer to Jake. She reached out slowly, as if asking permission. Jake nodded. She placed her hand near his head but didn't touch him. She closed her eyes and concentrated. Her skin patterns glowed brighter. Jake could see her trying hard to sense him. After a minute, she opened her eyes. There were tears on her face, making her luminescent skin sparkle. She looked at Jake with such sadness that it made his chest hurt. Nothing, she whispered. I feel nothing. It is like you are not there. How do you live like this? How do you bear being so alone? Jake didn't know how to answer. He had never thought of himself as alone before. But looking at Velshara's sad face, he started to understand. For her and her people, being unable to sense someone's mind was like being blind and deaf. They couldn't imagine living the way humans lived every day. We use words, Jake said quietly. We talk and listen. We watch each other's faces and try to understand. It's all we've ever known. Velshara looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised everyone. She smiled. It was a sad smile, but it was real. Then we have much to learn from each other, she said. You must teach me how to live in silence, and perhaps we can teach you what it means to be connected. That was how humanity's first real contact with alien life began. Not with grand speeches or formal treaties, but with a princess who was sad because she could not sense a human's thoughts. 3 weeks had passed since that first meeting. The Spirit of Discovery and Velshara's ship, the Luminous Path, now floated side by side near a small moon. Between them, humans and Xeen had built a research station. It was a simple structure made of metal and glass, but it represented something incredible. 2 species working together for the first time. Jake walked through the station's main corridor. Through the windows, he could see both ships and the planet below. Scientists from both species moved past him, carrying equipment and talking in mixed groups. The translation devices worked better now, making conversations almost normal. He found Sophie in the main laboratory. She was studying brain scans on multiple screens. Her eyes looked tired but excited. She had been working 16 hours a day, trying to understand why humans were different from every other species in the galaxy. Any progress? Jake asked. Sophie turned to him with a big smile. Jake, it's amazing. I've been comparing human brain structures with Xeen brains and 12 other species. We're completely different. Our brains evolved in total isolation. Every other species has these special neural structures that let them connect to the field. We don't have them at all. We developed different abilities instead. What kind of abilities? Jake asked. Privacy for one thing, Sophie said. Our thoughts are completely our own. No one can read them or influence them. And our brains are more flexible. We can change our thinking patterns easier than they can. When all minds are connected, there's pressure to think like everyone else. We never had that pressure. Jake thought about that. He had always taken privacy for granted. The idea that someone could just reach into his mind and know his thoughts was terrifying. But for the Xeen, that was normal. They had never known what it was like to keep a secret in their own head. Where's Velshara? Jake asked. Sophie grinned. In the observation room. She's been waiting for you for an hour. Jake found Velshara sitting by a large window looking at the stars. Her skin patterns were dim and blue, which he had learned meant she was thinking deeply. She turned when she heard him enter, and her colors brightened to warm yellows and greens. Jake, she said. Her voice through the translator was getting better, showing more emotion. I wanted to show you something. She held up a small device. When she pressed it, a hologram appeared in the air between them. It showed 2 Xeen standing close together. Their skin patterns were synchronized, glowing and changing in perfect harmony. They looked deeply happy. This is what connection looks like for us, Velshara explained. When two Jinn care for each other, their minds sync through the field. They share thoughts and feelings in real time. They never have to explain or guess. They just know. She turned off the device and looked at Jake. Her colors shifted to darker shades. But with you, I have nothing. When I try to sense you, it's like reaching into empty space. I have to guess what you're thinking. I have to watch your face and listen to your words and hope I understand correctly. It's exhausting, Jake, and it's frightening. Jake sat down next to her. Is it really so bad? Having to actually talk and listen? Velshara was quiet for a moment. No, she finally said. It's not bad. It's different. Sometimes when I figure out what you're feeling just by watching you, I feel proud. Like I've solved a puzzle. With my own people, I never have that feeling. Everything is just given to me. With you, I have to work for understanding. And that work means something, Jake said. Yes, Velshara said softly. Her colors warmed again. It means something. They sat together in silence for a while, watching the stars. Jake thought about how strange this was. A human and an alien, unable to share thoughts, just sitting quietly together. But somehow it felt right. The peaceful moment was broken by Ryan's voice over the intercom. Commander Morrison, we have a situation. Please come to the command center immediately. Jake and Velshara rushed to the command center. When they arrived, they found Ryan standing with 3 Xen officers. Everyone looked tense. On the main screen was another ship, much larger than either the Spirit of Discovery or the Luminous Path. It's a Xen military vessel, Ryan said. They arrived 10 minutes ago. They're demanding to speak with Princess Velshara. Velshara's colors went dark and gray. My brother, she said quietly. Prince Thalrek. He was always against my research into humans. The communication screen activated. A male Xen appeared. He looked similar to Velshara, but his patterns were sharper and moved more aggressively. His large dark eyes focused on his sister with clear disapproval. Sister, he said without greeting, the Empire has sent me to retrieve you. Your research has caused concern among the Imperial Council. These humans are an unknown factor. They cannot be sensed or trusted. Thalrek, please, Velshara said. We're learning so much. The humans are not dangerous. They're just different. Different is dangerous, Thalrek replied. For billions of years, all intelligent life has been connected through the field. It maintains peace and understanding. These humans exist outside that system. They could be spies, infiltrators. We cannot read their intentions. Jake stepped forward. Prince Thalrek, I understand your concerns. But we don't want to spy or infiltrate. We just want to learn and share knowledge. Yes, we're different, but different doesn't mean hostile. Thalrek looked at Jake with cold eyes. You speak well, human, but words are easy. Among my people, lies are impossible. We sense truth and deception directly. With you, we sense nothing. How can we trust nothing? The same way we trust each other, Jake said. Through actions and time. We observe behavior. We keep promises. We build trust slowly and carefully. Primitive, Thalrek said dismissively. Velshara, you have 3 days to complete your research and return to the homeworld. The Council will decide humanity's fate. If they are deemed too dangerous, they will be quarantined to their own solar system. Contact with the galactic community will be forbidden. The screen went dark. Velshara stood frozen, her colors flickering between dark blue and gray. Jake could see she was upset even without being able to sense her emotions. 3 days, she whispered. How can I explain everything we've learned in just 3 days? How can I make them understand? Ryan spoke up. Maybe we shouldn't trust them, Commander. They're already talking about quarantining us. We should prepare defenses. No, Jake said firmly. That's exactly what they expect. That's what would confirm their fears. We have to show them we can be trusted, not that we can be dangerous. Sophie arrived at the command center out of breath. Jake, I just heard. I have an idea. What if we could show them, not just tell them, but actually demonstrate how humans build trust and relationships without telepathy? How? Velshara asked. We document everything, Sophie said. Record our interactions. Show how we communicate through body language, tone of voice, facial expressions. Show how we build understanding through conversation and shared experiences. Make a complete guide to human communication. Jake nodded slowly. It could work. But we'd need Velshara to explain it to her people. She's the bridge between us. Velshara's colors brightened slightly. Yes, I can do that. I've been learning how to read you, Jake. How to understand you without the field. I can teach others. For the next 3 days, everyone worked without rest. They recorded everything. Jake and Velshara had long conversations while cameras watched. They showed how Jake's expressions changed when he was happy, sad, worried, or thoughtful. They demonstrated how tone of voice could change meaning. They explained jokes and sarcasm and all the complex ways humans communicated without words. Sophie compiled all the neurological data, showing exactly why humans were different and what unique abilities that difference gave them. She proved that human brains weren't broken or inferior, just evolved differently. On the last night before Velshara had to leave, she and Jake sat together in the observation room again. The documentation was complete. Tomorrow she would present it to her brother and eventually to the Imperial Council. "I'm scared," Velshara said suddenly. "I've never been scared before. In the field, I always know what others are thinking. I know if I'm safe or in danger, but with you I never know. And now I don't know if my people will understand. I don't know if they'll accept you." Jake reached out and gently took her hand. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse with soft light. "Fear means you care," he said. "It means this matters to you, and that gives me hope." Velshara looked at their joined hands. Her colors shifted to soft purple and pink. "I don't understand what I'm feeling," she said quietly. "Among my people, when we care for someone, we sense it through the field. The feeling is shared immediately, but with you, this feeling is only mine. It's private and strange, and I don't have words for it." "Maybe that makes it more real," Jake said, "when you have to figure out your own feelings instead of just knowing them through the field." Velshara smiled sadly. Then she asked the question that had been haunting her since they first met. "Why don't you sense me, Jake? Why must there be this wall between us? Sometimes I reach out with everything I have trying to touch your mind and I feel nothing. It hurts. It hurts to care about someone I cannot truly know." Jake didn't have a good answer. He squeezed her hand gently and they sat in silence. Two beings from different worlds, unable to share thoughts but somehow understanding each other anyway. The Galactic Summit took place on a neutral space station called Unity Point. It was enormous, bigger than any human structure in space. The station orbited a binary star system, and its halls were filled with beings from hundreds of different worlds. Jake walked through those halls with Ambassador Kate Rivera at his side. Kate was in her 50s with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent 30 years in diplomatic service on Earth, but nothing had prepared her for this. All around them, aliens of every shape and size moved through the corridors. Some walked on two legs like humans. Others floated or crawled or slithered. Their bodies were covered in fur, scales, feathers, or stranger things, but they all had one thing in common. They were all connected to the field, and they all looked at the humans like they were ghosts. "They're staring," Kate said quietly. "They can't help it," Jake replied. "We're invisible to them in the way that matters most. Imagine walking through a crowd and suddenly there's a person-shaped hole in your perception. That's what we are to them." They entered the main council chamber. It was a massive circular room with seats rising up in tiers all around. Thousands of delegates sat in those seats, representing the three great powers of the galaxy and hundreds of smaller governments. At the center was a raised platform where speakers would stand. Jake spotted Velshara sitting with the Jean delegation. She looked tired. Her skin patterns were muted and she sat very still. When she saw Jake, her colors brightened just a little. She gave him a small nod. It was all she could do in front of so many watching eyes. The summit began with speeches from the three great powers. First spoke High Chancellor Threnval of the Collective Chorus. He was a tall being made of what looked like living crystal. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like music. "For 4 billion years, intelligent life has evolved in harmony with the field," Threnval said. "The field connects us all. It prevents war, misunderstanding, and hatred. No species can lie to another. No species can hide evil intentions. This has brought peace to 40,000 worlds." He paused and looked directly at where the human delegation sat. "Now we face beings who exist outside this sacred connection. They are invisible to our senses. We cannot know their thoughts or verify their words. They could be planning anything and we would never know until it was too late. The collective chorus believes these humans must be contained to their own system until we understand this anomaly." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Jake felt his stomach tighten. This was worse than he had feared. They weren't just suspicious. They were afraid. Next spoke Senator Lisa Park of the Sovereign Assembly. She was a being with blue skin and 6 arms, each one moving independently as she gestured. Her voice was calmer than Threnvol's, but no less serious. "The Assembly acknowledges the concerns raised by the collective chorus," Lisa said. "However, we must also consider the evidence presented by Princess Velshara. Her research shows that humans are not malicious, merely different. They have developed their own forms of communication and trust building. Perhaps we should learn from them rather than fear them." This caused even more murmuring. Some delegates seemed intrigued. Others looked angry. Jake could see the chamber dividing into factions. Finally, Prince Thalric stood to speak for the Jin Empire. His colors were dark and serious. "The Jin Empire stands between these two positions," he said. "We recognize that the humans have achieved civilization without the field. This is remarkable, but it is also dangerous. How can we trust beings we cannot sense? How can we include them in our society when they exist outside the very thing that binds us together?" Thalric looked at his sister. "Princess Velshara has spent weeks with these humans. She claims to understand them, but understanding and trust are not the same thing. The Empire proposes a trial period, limited contact, carefully monitored, to see if coexistence is possible. It was better than complete isolation, but not by much." Jake stood up. Kate tried to stop him, but he was already walking toward the speaker's platform. The chamber fell silent as he climbed the steps. Thousands of alien eyes watched him. Thousands of minds reached out to sense him and found only emptiness. "My name is Commander Jake Morrison," he began. "I represent humanity. I know you cannot sense me. I know that frightens you. But fear of the unknown is something humans understand very well. We spent our entire history being afraid of each other. Different tribes, different nations, different beliefs. We couldn't read each other's minds. We had to learn to trust without that ability." Jake paused and looked around the chamber. "Yes, we made mistakes. We fought wars. We hurt each other. But we also learned. We learned that trust is not about knowing everything about someone. It's about choosing to believe in them despite uncertainty. We learned that diversity makes us stronger, not weaker. We learned that being different is not being dangerous." "You say the field has brought peace to 40,000 worlds," Jake continued. "But has it brought freedom? When everyone can read everyone's thoughts, where is privacy? Where is individuality? When all minds think alike, where is innovation? We humans may be alone in our heads, but that aloneness has made us creative, independent, and resilient." Threnvol stood up angrily. "You dare to question the field? It is the foundation of civilization." "I question nothing," Jake said calmly. "I'm just asking you to consider that there might be more than one way to build civilization. Your way has worked for you. Our way has worked for us. Maybe both ways have value." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed. A voice came over the intercom in multiple languages. "Security breach. All delegates remain in the chamber. Armed intruders detected." Chaos erupted. Delegates shouted and moved toward the exits. Security forces rushed in. Jake ran back to where Kate and the other humans were gathered. Ryan was already there, looking alert and ready. "What's happening?" Kate demanded. A Jin security officer approached them. "Extremists from the collective chorus. They've planted explosives near the station's power core. They're demanding all humans leave immediately or they'll destroy the station." "How many hostages?" Ryan asked. 12, including 3 humans from your engineering team," the officer replied. Jake's mind raced. This was exactly what he'd feared. Violence would only confirm everyone's worst fears about the dangers of contact with humanity. "Can we communicate with them?" "They're blocking all telepathic contact," the officer said. "They're using some kind of field dampener. Even we cannot sense them now." An idea struck Jake. "Why, that's it. That's our advantage. They've cut themselves off from the field to hide. But humans don't need the field. We can get close to them without them sensing us because they can't sense us anyway." Velshara appeared next to them. Her colors were sharp and bright with worry. "Jake, no. It's too dangerous. You could be killed. And 12 people will definitely be killed if we do nothing," Jake said, "including 3 of my crew. I have to try." Ryan stepped forward. "I'm coming with you, Commander." The security officer looked uncertain. "This is highly irregular. We should wait for specialized forces." "We don't have time," Jake said. "Every minute we wait, those explosives could go off. Tell me how to get to the power core." The next 20 minutes were the most tense of Jake's life. He and Ryan moved through maintenance tunnels. guided by instructions from security over their radios. The tunnels were dark and cramped. Strange alien machinery hummed and clicked around them. They reached a position overlooking the power core. Below them, they could see 5 extremists holding the hostages. The bombs were attached to critical systems, their timers counting down. 15 minutes remained. "We need a distraction," Ryan whispered. Jake spoke into his radio. "Security, I need you to cut the lights in this section. Complete darkness for 30 seconds. Can you do that?" Affirmative. "Lights out in 10 seconds. Jake and Ryan pulled on night vision goggles they had borrowed from station security. When the lights went out, the extremists panicked. They were used to sensing others through the field. In complete darkness, with their own field dampener blocking telepathy, they were as blind as anyone else. More blind, actually, because they had never learned to operate without the field. But humans had been training in the dark for centuries. Jake and Ryan moved fast and silent. Within seconds, they had stunned 2 of the extremists. Ryan disabled the field dampener while Jake covered the hostages. The remaining 3 extremists tried to fight, but they were disoriented and confused. When the lights came back on, station security rushed in and secured the situation. The bombs were disarmed with 3 minutes to spare. The hostages were safe. The crisis was over. Back in the council chamber, the mood had completely changed. The delegates had watched everything through security cameras. They had seen humans operate effectively in situations where telepathic species would be helpless. They had seen courage and quick thinking. They had seen trust between humans who couldn't read each other's minds but worked together perfectly anyway. Velshara stood to address the chamber. Her voice was strong, but Jake could see her colors trembling with emotion. "You have seen today what I have been trying to explain," she said. "Humans are not weak because they lack the field. They have developed different strengths. They can do things we cannot. They can teach us things we have forgotten." She paused and looked directly at her brother. "And I have learned something else. Something that frightens me but also fills me with wonder. I have learned to care for someone without the field. Commander Morrison and I cannot share thoughts. I cannot sense his emotions. But I have watched him and listened to him and chosen to trust him. That choice, that effort, means more to me than any automatic connection through the field ever could." The chamber was silent. Then Senator Lisa Park stood up. "The Sovereign Assembly votes to accept humanity as full members of galactic society." Slowly, other delegates stood. One by one, governments voted for acceptance. Even Threnval, though he looked unhappy about it, acknowledged that humans had proven themselves. Finally, Prince Thalrek stood. He looked at Jake for a long moment. Then he looked at his sister. "The Gene Empire recognizes humanity," he said quietly. "May we all learn from this day." But as Jake celebrated with his team, he saw Velshara being led away by Gene officials. She looked back at him once, her colors shifting to deep blue sadness. He knew this wasn't over. The political battle might be won, but the personal cost was yet to be determined. 3 months had passed since the summit. 3 long months without seeing Velshara. Jake stood in the research station's observation room, the same place where they used to sit together and watch the stars. But now he sat alone. The research station was busier than ever. Human and alien scientists worked side by side on dozens of projects. Ambassador Rivera had negotiated trade agreements with 5 different species. Humanity was becoming part of the galactic community. Everything Jake had worked for was happening, but he couldn't stop thinking about Velshara. The last message he'd received from her was brief. She was on the Gene homeworld, dealing with political matters. She couldn't say more. Even through the cold translation of text, Jake could sense something was wrong. Sophie found him there one evening. She sat down next to him without saying anything at first. She just looked out at the stars with him. "You love her," Sophie said finally. It wasn't a question. Jake was quiet for a moment. "Is that crazy? Loving someone whose mind I can never touch? Someone from a completely different species?" "Maybe," Sophie said with a small smile. "But you've never been good at doing the sensible thing. That's why you're a good commander." Jake's communicator beeped. It was an encrypted message. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. The message was from Velshara, but it was scrambled and broken up like it had been sent in a hurry or through interference. The message contained coordinates and a single sentence. "I found something. They're trying to stop me, please." Jake stood up immediately. "Sophie, get Ryan and meet me at the docking bay in 10 minutes. "We're going to the Gene homeworld." Sophie grabbed his arm. Jake, you can't just fly to the Xene homeworld uninvited. This could cause a diplomatic incident. Then it causes an incident, Jake said. Velshara needs help. I'm not abandoning her. The journey to the Xene homeworld took 2 days. Jake spent that time trying to decode more of Velshara's message. Slowly, he pieced together what she had found. In the ancient archives of her people, she had discovered records of other species that existed outside the field. Not just humans, but dozens of others throughout history. And they had all vanished. The implications were terrifying. Had these species been destroyed, driven away, forced to join the field against their will? Velshara's research suggested that the field itself was not natural. It had been created billions of years ago by an ancient civilization that wanted to unite all intelligent life. But unite might have been a polite word for what really happened. If this gets out, it could shake the foundation of galactic society, Sophie said as she read the decoded data. Every species believes the field is the natural state of consciousness. If they learn it was imposed, forced on their ancestors, how will they react? That's probably why they're trying to stop her, Ryan said darkly. Some truths are too dangerous to be known. As they approached the Xene homeworld, Jake's breath caught. The planet was beautiful beyond words. Its surface glowed with soft bioluminescent light, making it look like a jewel against the darkness of space. Crystalline cities rose from vast forests that pulsed with color. It was a world shaped by beings who could sense each other's thoughts, who lived in perfect harmony. But Jake knew that beauty came at a cost. The cost of everyone thinking alike. The cost of no privacy, no secrets, no true individuality. They were immediately contacted by Xene traffic control. Human vessel, you are entering restricted space. State your purpose. This is Commander Jake Morrison. I request permission to land. I have urgent business with Princess Velshara. There was a long pause. Then a different voice came through, one Jake recognized. It was Prince Thalrek. Commander Morrison, your arrival is unexpected but perhaps timely. My sister has been acting erratically. She refuses to stop her dangerous research. Perhaps you can talk sense into her. Jake's jaw tightened. Where is she? Under protective custody in the Imperial Palace. For her own safety. You may see her, but under guard. The ship was escorted to a landing pad near the palace. As Jake and his team disembarked, they were met by a dozen Xene guards. Their skin patterns were dark and aggressive, making their intentions clear. This was not a friendly welcome. They were led through the palace halls. The building was incredible, made of materials that seemed to shift between solid and transparent. Through the walls, Jake could see gardens and fountains and rooms filled with Xene going about their daily lives. But despite the beauty, he felt watched. He felt unwelcome. Finally, they reached a large door guarded by more soldiers. The door opened and Jake saw Velshara inside. She was sitting at a desk covered in holographic displays, still working even in captivity. But when she looked up and saw Jake, her entire body lit up with bright, joyful colors. Jake, she breathed. She stood and took a step toward him, but the guards moved to block her. She stopped, her colors dimming with sadness. Are you all right? Jake asked. Your message said they were trying to stop you. I'm fine. Physically, Velshara gestured at the holographic data. But they want me to stop this research. They say it's dangerous, that it could destabilize galactic society. Is it true? Sophie asked, stepping forward. Did you really find evidence that other species existed outside the field? Velshara nodded. Over the past 4 billion years, at least 37 species evolved without connection to the field. Some were integrated through technology. Others simply disappeared from all records. And the original field itself was created artificially by a civilization called the First Makers. They believed that connecting all minds would end war and suffering. And it did. But it also ended diversity of thought. That's why they're afraid, Jake said. If people learn the field isn't natural, they might question it. They might want to leave it. The door opened again. Prince Thalrek entered, followed by an elderly Xene whose patterns were so complex and layered, they seemed to contain entire galaxies. This was Elder Seer Mir Anthus, one of the most powerful telepaths in the Empire. Commander Morrison, Thalrek said coolly. Thank you for coming. Perhaps you can help us resolve this situation. Resolve it how? Jake asked. By making Velshara stop searching for the truth? By making her understand that some truths are too dangerous, Thalrek replied. The field has maintained peace for billions of years. If that peace is disrupted because of my sister's curiosity and her obsession with humans, countless lives could be lost. Elder Mir Anthus spoke for the first time. Her voice was ancient and deep. But what if the young princess is right? What if we have been living a comfortable lie? I am old, Commander Morrison. I have lived for 800 of your years. And in all that time, I have sometimes wondered if we lost something important when we all became connected. When I look at you humans, I see something we Jin have not had for eons. Freedom. Thalrek looked shocked. Elder, you cannot mean that. The field is our greatest achievement. Or our greatest prison, Myranthus replied gently. I have not decided which, but I believe Princess Velshara's research should continue. The truth, whatever it is, deserves to be known. And if that truth tears apart everything we've built, Thalrek demanded. Then perhaps it was not as strong as we believed, Mir Anthus said. Velshara stepped forward, her colors bright with determination. Brother, I am not trying to destroy our way of life. I am trying to understand it. The humans have shown us that there are other ways to exist, other ways to think and feel and connect. That doesn't make our way wrong, but it means we have choices we never knew we had. She looked at Jake. When I first met Jake, I was terrified by the silence. I couldn't understand how anyone could live without the field. But he taught me that silence has its own voice, that privacy has value, that choosing to trust someone is more meaningful than automatically knowing their thoughts. Her colors shifted to soft purples and pinks as she continued. I have done something no gene has done in billions of years. I have fallen in love with someone whose mind I cannot touch, and it is the most real, most precious thing I have ever felt. Because I chose it. Because I worked for it. Because it is mine alone, and not shared through the field. The room fell silent. Thalrek's colors went through rapid changes, expressing emotions Jake couldn't read. Finally, the prince spoke quietly. You truly care for this human? More than I thought possible, Velshara said. Thalrek turned to Jake. And you? Do you care for my sister? Jake looked at Velshara, at her luminescent skin, her dark eyes, her colors that showed emotions he was learning to read. Yes, he said simply. I do. Even though you can never truly know her? Thalrek asked. Never sense her thoughts or feel her emotions directly? Maybe that's why it matters so much, Jake said. Because we have to try, because understanding doesn't come automatically, because every moment of connection is something we built together, word by word, gesture by gesture, choice by choice. Elder Myranthus smiled, her patterns glowing warmly. Prince Thalrek, I believe your sister and this human have discovered something important. Perhaps the field has made us lazy. We know each other's thoughts so easily that we've forgotten the joy of trying to understand someone. These two have rediscovered that joy. Thalrek stood silently for a long time. Finally, he sighed, his colors softening. Very well. Velshara, your research may continue, but it must be presented carefully, with wisdom. We cannot shock the Empire with these revelations all at once. He looked at Jake. And you, Commander Morrison. I do not understand what you and my sister have, but I can see it is real. The Imperial Court will want to question you both. Be prepared to defend not just your relationship, but everything it represents. As the guards left and Velshara was finally free to move, she walked to Jake. She reached out and touched his face gently, her hand warm against his skin. Thank you for coming, she whispered. Thank you for choosing me, even though I am silent to you, just as you are silent to me. The Imperial Court of the Jin Empire was more magnificent than anything Jake had ever imagined. The chamber was vast, with walls that seemed to be made of living light. Thousands of Jin filled the space, their combined luminescence making the room glow like a sunrise. And above it all, the field hummed with the thoughts and emotions of everyone present. Everyone except Jake and his team. They stood at the center of the chamber, a small island of silence in a sea of connected minds. Jake could feel the weight of thousands of telepathic beings trying to sense him and finding nothing. It made his skin prickle with awareness. Velshara stood beside him. She had spent hours preparing him for this moment, explaining the customs and protocols of the imperial court. But she had also warned him that this would be unlike anything he had experienced. The entire empire would be watching through the field. Billions of minds connected to this single moment. The emperor himself sat on a raised throne of crystal. He was ancient, his patterns complex and layered with centuries of experience. When he spoke, his voice resonated through the chamber both physically and telepathically. Of course, Jake only heard the physical part. "Commander Jake Morrison of Earth," the emperor said, "you stand before this court accused of nothing but questioned about everything. You represent a species that challenges our most fundamental understanding of consciousness. Speak. Help us understand what you are." Jake took a deep breath. "Your Majesty, I cannot tell you what humans are in terms you would understand naturally. I can only tell you what we do. We are individuals who must work to connect. We build trust through actions, not automatic knowledge. We create bonds through choice, not through shared consciousness. And perhaps because of this, those bonds mean something different to us." A member of the court stood up. Her patterns were sharp and critical. "But how can such bonds be real? How can you trust someone whose thoughts you cannot verify? How can you love someone whose emotions you cannot sense?" "By watching them," Jake said. "By listening not just to their words but to how they say them. By observing their actions over time. By seeing if they keep their promises. It takes longer than sensing through the field. It requires effort and attention. But it also means that when we trust someone, we chose to trust them. It wasn't given to us automatically." Another court member stood. "Princess Velshara claims to have feelings for you. But how can this be real love when you cannot share consciousness? When your minds cannot touch?" Before Jake could answer, Velshara stepped forward. "May I speak?" The emperor nodded. Velshara's colors were steady and bright as she addressed the court. "I have asked myself that question many times. How can I love someone I cannot sense? At first I thought it was impossible. The silence terrified me, but then I learned something our people have forgotten." She paused, making sure everyone was listening. "I learned that knowing someone is not the same as understanding someone. Through the field we know each other's thoughts instantly, but do we truly understand? Do we see each other as individuals, or just as parts of the collective consciousness? With Jake, I have no choice but to see him as an individual. Every conversation is an effort. Every moment of understanding is earned. And because of that effort, because of that choice, what we have built together is entirely ours. It belongs to no one else. It is not shared through the field. It is private and precious and real in a way I never knew was possible." The court murmured. Jake could see patterns of light flickering across the assembled gene as they communicated through the field. He wished he could know what they were saying, but he had learned to accept the silence. Elder Myoranthus rose slowly from her seat. "Your Majesty, if I may, I believe Princess Velshara is revealing something profound. We have lived with the field for so long that we have forgotten what came before, but I am old enough to remember the oldest stories, passed down from the first makers themselves." She looked around the chamber. The field was created to end suffering and war, and it succeeded. But it also ended something else. It ended the struggle that comes from being separate. That struggle is painful, yes, but it is also where growth comes from, where art and philosophy and new ideas are born. We have had peace for billions of years, but at what cost? Have we become stagnant? Have we stopped evolving? These humans, she continued, gesturing at Jake and his team, are not broken. They are not primitive. They have something we lost long ago. The ability to be truly alone, and therefore the ability to truly choose connection. Perhaps we should not pity them. Perhaps we should learn from them. The court erupted in discussion. Patterns of light flashed everywhere as thousands of minds debated. The emperor raised his hand for silence. This court must make a decision. But first I would ask Commander Morrison one final question. Jake met the emperor's gaze. "Yes, Your Majesty. If we offered to integrate humanity into the field, to give you the ability to sense and be sensed like all other species, would you accept?" The chamber fell absolutely silent. Jake felt Sophie tense beside him. Ryan's hand moved slightly toward his weapon before stopping. This was the ultimate question. Would humans give up their uniqueness for connection? Jake thought carefully before answering. Your Majesty, I cannot speak for all of humanity. That would be a decision for our entire species to make together. But I can tell you what I believe. I believe that our silence is not a curse. It is part of what makes us human. Without it, we would lose our privacy, our independence, our unique way of thinking. We would become something else. Something that might be better in some ways, but would no longer be us. He looked at Velshara. That said, I also believe that humanity and the field species can learn from each other. You can teach us about connection and harmony. We can teach you about individuality and choice. Together, we might create something neither of us could achieve alone. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then his pattern shifted to warm, approving colors. Well spoken, Commander. This court has reached a decision. Humanity will be granted full membership in galactic society with one condition. A joint colony will be established where humans and field species can live and work together. This colony will serve as a bridge between our ways of life. Princess Velshara and Commander Morrison will oversee this project. Relief flooded through Jake. It was more than he had hoped for. He looked at Velshara and saw her colors blazing with joy. But then the Emperor continued speaking. However, Princess Velshara, you must understand the sacrifice this represents. By choosing to work so closely with humans, by developing feelings for one who exists outside the field, you will become somewhat isolated from your own people. You will experience a loneliness that no Jean has felt in eons. Are you prepared for this? Velshara stood tall. Your Majesty, I have already experienced that loneliness. From the moment I met Commander Morrison, I have felt the gap between us. And yes, it is painful, but it is also beautiful. It has taught me that connection is more meaningful when it requires effort. That love is stronger when it is chosen rather than automatic. She turned to Jake. You asked me once why I cannot sense you. Why there must be this wall between us. I have asked myself that question 1,000 times. But now I understand. The wall is not a barrier. It is a space where something new can grow. Something that belongs only to us. Jake stepped closer to her. I wish I could sense your emotions the way your people do. I wish I could share thoughts with you. But you're right. What we have is ours. We built it word by word, gesture by gesture, moment by moment. And that makes it real. Velshara did something that shocked the entire court. She reached up with both hands and covered Jake's ears. Then she spoke, knowing he couldn't hear her words but that her people could through the field. She was creating a moment of privacy in reverse. A moment where her people could sense her emotions but Jake could not. Through the field she shared everything she felt. The fear of loving someone she couldn't sense. The joy of discovering that connection was still possible. The pain of being separated from both her own people and from Jake, by the unbridgeable gap between their minds. And finally the hope that somehow this gap could be the foundation for something new. When she lowered her hands, every gene in the chamber understood. They understood that what Velshara and Jake had was not less than a normal relationship, but different. Perhaps even more profound because it required constant effort and choice. The court adjourned with the decision made. Humanity was accepted, the joint colony would be built, and Jake and Velshara would lead it together. Months later, construction on the colony was well underway. It was located on a beautiful planet with purple skies and 3 moons. The architecture blended human and Xene design, creating something that belonged to both cultures and neither. Jake stood on a balcony overlooking the construction site. Velshara joined him, her colors soft and peaceful in the fading light of the planet's sun. They watched together as human workers and Xene builders collaborated on the structures below. Do you ever regret it? Jake asked quietly. Choosing this path? Choosing me? Velshara was quiet for a moment. Sometimes I miss the comfort of the field, the easy connection with my people, but then I remember what we have instead. This choice, this effort, this relationship that we built from nothing but patience and hope. She reached out and took his hand. You asked me before why I cannot sense you, why you are silent to me. I used to think that was the tragedy of our relationship, but now I understand it differently. You are not silent. You speak in ways the field cannot hear, through your actions, your choices, your loyalty, and I have learned to listen to that language. Jake squeezed her hand gently. We're building something here that's never existed before. A place where silence and connection can coexist, where different ways of thinking can work together. Yes, Velshara agreed, and it started with us. With a princess who learned to love in silence, and a human who learned that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. Sophie approached them on the balcony. The first families are arriving tomorrow. 20 human families and 20 Zine families. They're all volunteers who want to try living between both worlds. Are they ready? Jake asked. Sophie smiled. Probably not. But neither were you two, and look how that turned out. As the sun set, painting the purple sky in shades of orange and red, Jake thought about everything that had led to this moment. First contact, fear and misunderstanding, political battles, personal sacrifice. And through it all, a connection that shouldn't have been possible but existed anyway. Velshara reached out one more time with her empathic senses, trying as she always did to touch Jake's mind. And as always, she felt nothing but silence. But this time the silence didn't hurt. This time she understood that the silence was not empty. It was full of potential, full of choices, full of love that existed not because it was automatic, but because it was chosen. Why don't you sense me, human? She had asked him in sadness on that first day they met. Now she knew the answer. She didn't sense him because that was never what mattered. What mattered was understanding him, choosing him, loving him despite the impossible gap between their minds. And perhaps that was the greatest gift humanity had given the galaxy. Not technology or science or military strength, but the reminder that connection is more meaningful when it is chosen, that understanding is more profound when it must be earned, that love is stronger when it exists in spite of barriers, not because those barriers don't exist. Jake looked at Velshara and smiled. She smiled back, her colors warm and bright. They didn't need the field to know what the other was feeling. They had something else, something built carefully over time through patience and effort and choice. They had trust. They had understanding. They had love. And sometimes in the quiet moments, Velshara would reach out with her senses and touch that silence where Jake existed. And instead of sadness, she felt peace, because she had learned that silence could speak volumes if you knew how to listen. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, both of them looked up. Somewhere out there, billions of minds were connected through the field, sharing thoughts and emotions in perfect harmony. And here, on this new colony, something different was being born, not replacing that harmony, but adding to it, creating space for those who existed in silence to be heard in new ways. "What are you thinking?" Velshara asked. It was a question she had learned to ask instead of just knowing the answer. Jake smiled. "I'm thinking that we did it. We built a bridge between silence and connection, and that bridge starts with us." Velshara leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Through the field, she could sense nothing from him, but through touch, through presence, through the choice to be together, she sensed everything that mattered. And in that moment, on a new world under strange stars, a human and an alien stood together in comfortable silence, not because they had no words, but because sometimes silence itself was enough.